Hey, brother.
How are you, sir?
I'm blessed.
Nice to see you.
You had a lovely time at Parliament.
Oh, yeah?
6 were
I wish I could do
so
it.
gracious.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and get started in just about a minute after a few people sign in. If you don't know the people sitting next to you, turn to them and say hello. Closer to the mic? Okay. Raise it up. I know how to do that. Okay. Well, shalom. It's a beautiful night, and it's a beautiful thing when people of faith gather in unity. I want to welcome you. My name is Gard Jameson. I'm the chair of the Interfaith Council of Southern Nevada. And tonight we begin a series, the Interfaith Forums, where we have a wonderful opportunity to engage in a conversation about things that matter most. And we have a very special panel tonight. It's a panel that consists of primarily youth, although there is one holdout at the end, you might notice. He tells me he's become Benjamin Buttons. He's getting younger with every day. Thank you, Joni. So the Interfaith Council has a few basic premises upon which it operates. One is that there is a quality of beauty in diversity, and that underneath all of our diversity there is a unity. And when we acknowledge that unity, we begin to experience personally the source of all that is. We also believe that real peace on the planet will only come through dialogue, through mutual understanding, and that dialogue is really a very simple thing. It's a function of deep listening and loving speech. And when that kind of dialogue permeates the culture of the planet, there will never be another war. And so for that, we all pray. And speaking of prayer, it's a good time to acknowledge the host of all of this. So if you would bow your heads now for just a moment. Divine creator, sustainer, and destiny of all that is, we are most grateful to be here this evening in this sanctuary with these people in fellowship, to acknowledge your presence amongst us, and to acknowledge you as the source of all love. We ask a special blessing upon this planet. We're a little confused down here, Heavenly Father, and we need your enlightenment. And we pray through events like this, we may create a culture of peace, a peace that is drawn from you. We thank you for each of the panelists here tonight and for the traditions that they represent. We thank you most of all for being a God of love and grace and ministry. And in the name of all that is holy, we give thanks and say amen. So I'm going to share a few brief ground rules tonight of how we will proceed. This is the 36th annual Interfaith Forum series, and I want to pick on a very special person in the audience tonight. Her name is Alita Nelson. She was there at the beginning, and she's still here. Go, Alita. Thank you. We would not be having this event but for Alita. We thank you, Alita. So tonight we're going to have the panelists speaking each for 7 minutes till about 8 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock we're going to have some questions and answers. And those questions are going to come from you. And so that we have some, and I don't think I'm going to call them ushers. What are we going to call them, Alita? Card carriers. Okay. So Martin, is that you back there? Yeah, I think I can see you. And Mary, thank you. And they're going to distribute cards, and we have Laura as well. So we give thanks to them. They're going to distribute cards to everyone if you raise your hand and wish for a card. And on that card, you can write a question, and the question is denominated in only two ways. One is to a specific panelist that you want to address your question, or two is to the whole panel. So we will go through those questions, and oftentimes it's those individual questions that really perk our interest. So as we go along through the evening, think of what you would like to ask and what you would like to hear from our panelists. So tonight our host is Congregation Ner Tamid, and I will tell you, being in Interfaith is really a wonderful thing, because my rabbi is Sandy Axelrod down at the far end, and so we have Sabbath on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if you're really attuned to interfaith relations. So the Muslims on Friday, the Jews on Saturday, and the Christians on Sunday. It's a 3-day weekend. So I encourage you all to think about getting involved with interfaith activities. I also want to give thanks to the members of the Interfaith Council. Would you please stand up, the board members of the Interfaith Council who are here tonight? Thank you for your presence. And it is our Interfaith Council that engages in the selection of the topics. And over the course of the next few weeks, we've got some really interesting topics, from sacred text to tech ethics, life and death. And then we have what's called an open forum, where it's kind of a free-for-all, and we can ask any and all questions, and we can present in any way we would like, as long as we're respectful to all the traditions that are in attendance. And respectful means we're not here to proselytize, we're not here to try to debate or convince somebody of our position. We're here to share what our deepest experience is of our tradition and how it's changed our lives. So I want to thank our panelists here tonight, beginning with my friend Sterling from the Baha'i Faith. Sterling, raise your hand. And Jess Malik, whose father is Teji. Teji, raise your hand. He's a member of our Interfaith Council. And Jess, I've known for many years. Welcome, welcome. And then one of my favorite people on the planet, Taliba Abdul Wahid, who is a second-year law school at the law school here at UNLV. And I know Tom Thomas is here and is a big supporter of our law school. This lady, someday we may be voting for her for Attorney General. That's my position, and I'm sticking to it. And then we have a dear friend and brother, Joshua Lucas, from the LDS Church. Welcome, Joshua. And Allison Wadman from the Catholic tradition. And then Jessica Hutchin. Oh, no. Rabbi Sandy Axelrod, who is posing as Jessica Hutchins. And we're going to be talking about spiritual but not religious. One of the hot topics in the world of religion these days, and I teach at the University of World Religions, and I will tell you, I always take a survey of my students, and virtually all of my students, with a few holdouts, will say, I'm spiritual, but I don't belong to a religious tradition. I don't trust religion. That's a big question. And so we decided to bring that question to our panelists and to all of you tonight. And so we're really excited to hear from them. But before we do, I'd like Sandy to get up and tell us a little bit about this place that we're in.
I'm too old, George.
Yeah, well, he did tell me, he taught me some Hebrew. You know, he knows Hebrew. He said those letters up there mean eat at Joe's. Yeah. Is that right, Sandy?
God, that's sacrilegious now.
Okay.
I make those jokes. Well, welcome everyone to Congregation Ner Tamid. We are delighted that you are here. Obviously, our cantor Jessica, who fits into the young adult category. She got sick at the last minute, and so she called upon me, and I'm delighted to do it because I also have a different perspective, having been a rabbi for 40 years, to see the change in cultures of young people as the decades have worn on. So I'll probably bring that into the conversation. You are in the sanctuary of Congregation Ner Tamid. We were founded in 1974, and this sanctuary was opened in 2007. We moved from Emerson, which now I think is housed by Scientology, and that's going to be the location of one of our forums as well. So this congregation really is centered now in Henderson. We're very proud of it. And you'll see the windows. The windows are meant to symbolize the fact that when you come here for worship, you don't shut the world out. Your prayers are intended to go forth and affect the world, and the world affects you when you come here. When you look behind me, you'll see this curtain-like structure. That is our Holy Ark, A-R-K, and when it is opened, we have people stand out of respect, and behind those curtains are our Torah scrolls. And the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, what Christians would call the Old Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and the scrolls are up to 300 years old, and they're in active use. Except for one of them, we just dedicated it, and it is not 1 year old yet. So we had a very beautiful donation, and now every time I get to tell the bar mitzvah kids, you're the first one reading from this Torah, this particular passage, I can do that for a year or so. Up above, you'll see that light is always on, and if I was to use humor, that is to bring consternation to the dads who always try to turn the lights out, because that light never goes out. That was kind of a weak joke, but
That's
I thought
good.
I would use it.
That's
I'd
good.
give it a try. That light is called, strangely enough, the eternal light, because it is always on, and it reminds us that God is always with us. And the expression that Gard likes to tease, only because I usually tease him first, is not Edith Joe's. It is actually a quote that I painstakingly picked, Gard, when I designed the sanctuary. And it says, "O house of Jacob, come let us walk by the light of the Lord." And I think that's a good message for us to walk not in darkness, but in light. So with those thoughts in mind, I turn it over to Gard, and I pray he will not take this for my 7 minutes.
Well, you can see why I love Rabbi and why I consider him one of my best friends and my rabbi. And so I want to ask before we get underway, and by the way, the biographies of each of the panelists is here in the brochure. If you don't have one, let us know. We'll get you a brochure, but their biography is there. But I want to ask here tonight, how many are coming from the Jewish tradition? Would you raise your hand? Lovely, lovely. Thank you for being here. And how many from the Buddhist tradition? I saw one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and there's Lacey. Hi. Lacey works with us, my wife and I, at Volunteers in Medicine of Southern Nevada. We love you, Lacey. Thank you. And how many from the Hindu tradition? Okay. From the Islamic tradition? Lovely, lovely. Welcome. Salam. Salam. And from the Sikh tradition? Raise it high, Yeah, okay, come on. We want your daughter to see you. All right, welcome, welcome. And from the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, how many? Fantastic, fantastic. Here to support Joshua. All right, Joshua, you got support, brother. Fantastic. And how many Protestants in the audience tonight? Oh, okay. I'll raise my hand a little bit on that one. And from the Baha'i tradition? Lovely. Welcome. And from the Unification Church? Leslie, welcome. One of our board members. From Scientology? Okay. And from humanism or atheism? Welcome. Welcome. And from paganism? One of the things you learn through Interfaith is the diversity, and again, the unity in diversity. It's really fabulous. So we welcome you, and thank you for being here. And from the Center for Spiritual Living? Wow, welcome, welcome, welcome. Sister Katie, you done well. Thank you. And from any indigenous traditions? My wife is part Hopi, so I'll raise my hand halfway. And from Christian Science. And any other traditions that I haven't called out? So you see, we have quite a bit of diversity here, and the family is here. So welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you're here. We're going to go ahead and begin. Each of the panelists will have 7 minutes, and my dear Alita has given me an egg timer, which is pretty good with eggs. It's also pretty good with people speaking. So at 7 minutes, it will be a little bit of a buzz.
I just got a text. That microphone that is in the center podium does not work with our live stream. So they should use the handheld mic.
Use the handheld mic, which is on your
When
table.
they use that podium, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, yes, you could come over here too. That'd be fantastic. So I want to ask first if Sandy would come up and begin our session tonight.
So guard, don't push the button for 5 minutes. You know what it means when a rabbi takes his watch off? Nothing. All right, those are my 2 opening jokes. So, I've been a rabbi 40 years. I've seen a lot of differences from when I began my career and where we are now. And I could give a whole lecture on this subject, but I'm going to make it kind of kitsur, just a little bit. Up until about 1965, the intermarriage rate in Judaism was 5%. 5%. And now, among non-Orthodox Jews, the intermarriage rate is approaching 70%. When I was growing up, I have 3 sisters. There was 4 of us. My parents married fairly young. Right now, I would say the average non-Orthodox family has none to 1.5 children statistically. And statistically, people are getting married much later. If I see anyone under the age of 30 coming to me to get married, I'm shocked now. Whereas in the beginning of my career, people were getting married at 22 and 23. So why do I share those statistics with you? Because there are a lot of reasons that people kind of drift from their faith. If you think about people who marry younger, usually what happens is they go from their parents' home to, this young family that they are developing, and they look to their mom or their dad for the setup of family traditions. By the time they have their first child, they could be 40 years old, which, already they've been adults a long time, and they have drifted from the religion because a lot of people are motivated to raise their children in a particular faith, and they haven't had children for decades. So I think that is one of the contributing factors why in non-Orthodox Judaism we have had kind of this cultural religious drift. In fact, in Orthodox Judaism, they are growing, and they marry very young, and they can have 7 or 8 children. So statistically, I think not only in Judaism, but in many faiths, the more orthodox or traditional segment of that particular religion will find similar statistics. Now we add other layers as well. Competition for ideas, social media, just their busy lives, starting their career, all those wonderful things that, well, at least my daughter, who's 37, tells me distracts her. And so when they say they're spiritual and not religious, I don't want to start anything, but I don't believe them. I really don't think that they're spiritual. I think that they have not carved out a part of their life that leaves room for that sense of spirituality. They're not looking for God, they're looking for work, they're looking for a spouse, they're looking to build their careers. They're not looking they're not looking, and therefore they are just kind of coasting on what they remember from when they were children. And childhood memories are not enough to sustain a religion or even a sense of religiosity. And so if they wake up and they're now 40, 45, and they're still going to mom and dad and saying, how do I do this holiday? I've never done it myself. That's a lot of years. So I would love them to be spiritual, but I think a lot of them, especially in the Jewish tradition, are cultural. It's what they were born to, and so they're cultural Jews. They might have some Yiddish language. They might, have a bagel and schmear. They might have, some Jewish foods that make them ethnically Jewish. They'll have values that have been passed down, but again, with the high rate of intermarriage, the values can be a mixture, because people who intermarry, they often either choose no religion because they can't decide what to do, or they try to raise them in both traditions, and eventually they let the kids choose, and they don't necessarily send them to a synagogue or a church to get that grounding. So I think when we talk about, why is it that there is this drift and more Jews, non-Orthodox of course, or none, I think those are some of the reasons. High rate of intermarriage, low rate of fertility, getting married much later, and that they are working on building their lives and not necessarily their sense of religiosity. And that's really what I've observed over the years of 40 years as I've looked at the lives of these young people from when I first began my career until now. So how do we reverse it? Well, I guess the younger rabbis have to become more and more creative. If Cantor Jessica was here, she is extremely creative. She's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on podcasts. She comes up with all these kinds of creative programs in order to be a magnet to the young people, which I think is great. But I will also observe this as well. I did all those things when I was her age and younger, and it served as this magnet, but I had different material to deal with, so the magnet was there. We have a different problem today, which is not only to offer programming to try to get them to come and to be a welcoming place. We are dealing with people who don't necessarily have that rootedness to even be attracted in the first place. And so there's education that needs to be had. And that, I think, is at the core of all religious traditions. How do we educate people? How do we transmit the message of our religious tradition? How do we speak 8 minutes instead of 7 so that with that extra minute, we can make a difference in these young people's lives? That is our challenge. Thank you, everybody.
Now you know why I love this man. So I would like to welcome Allison from the Catholic tradition to come on up and share a few thoughts with us. And by the way, we have cards in the back. If you would like a card to write a question down, just raise your hand, and the card carriers will bring them to you. Or they already have them? Oh, you have cards. Okay. So just wave them, and the card carriers will gather them up from you. So
Check.
Are you going to go from over there?
I'm going to go for the handheld mic.
Go for it, girl.
We're
All
going to
right.
change it up here.
This is what's going to change things.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Wadman. I am 28 years old, and I am a member of the Catholic faith, also part of Christianity. And a little bit about me. I am the public relations manager at MGM Resorts International. I oversee the entertainment, sports, and nightlife part of the portfolio. Not something typical that you would think someone who's very faithful would be in, right? And that's exactly why I do what I do, is because I try to keep my faith in everything that I do. When I'm not working, I am a volunteer at Holy Spirit. I teach high school students confirmation, leading them closer to Christ. And then I am also the founding member of our young adult group, Lighthouse. It is Holy Spirit's first ever young adult group for ages 21 to 35-ish. And that, for a reason, is because there is a lack of programming in the Christian faith and in the Catholic Church. And which is why we're going to address why is it that more millennials and more Gen Zs, the younger generation, why do they fall short of religion? Why do they feel more spiritual rather than anything else, or if any at all? That's because in the Christian faith, there's sacraments. It's a ritual of showing the existence of God. And in our religion, you are baptized when you're born, and then you receive your first communion, you receive your first confession, and then your confirmation. Through all of those years, you are from birth to about 16 years old, just for your guys' knowledge. So you have so much programming in between, and then all of a sudden it falls short. And the next sacrament is marriage. And you don't get married until your late 20s now, 30s. So from 16 to your 28 through 35, there's no programming. There's no education of how do we continue to pursue our faith? How do we exercise or express and explore who we are and what we could be? So we made a community for that. And I think that is what is really going to pivot that change in the younger generation. People aren't religious anymore in the younger group because it's simply not trendy. It's not on TikTok. It's not something that goes viral. You don't see a viral video about a group of people praying. It's not trendy to pray. It's trendy to manifest. It's trendy to have your crystals and charge your energy. There are young people searching for this bigger power, but don't have the knowledge of what exactly that is. They're just calling to a power. They're looking for something bigger for sure, but they don't have that education. And so we want to try and pivot that. We want to make religion approachable. We want to make conversations about God and exploring your faith and what you believe or not believe, what you need in your life. We want to make those conversations approachable and normalized. It's not normalized today. If anything, religion might be mocked on social media, and that's the largest thing that has contributed to a lot of different societal norms that not everyone has been used to. So how do we challenge our communities to engage our younger generation? We make it approachable. We limit those walls, and we welcome everyone and educate everyone and answer any questions that is not necessarily always talked about. Thank you.
Allison, thank you so much. I just recall when I was an undergraduate, I took a course on religion, and I was given the assignment to write why Jesus is amoral. Well, after having written the essay 7 times, the professor of philosophy took me into his office. He said, "Jameson, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to pass you in the course." So that's part of it, is education. Joshua, give us a few words.
Hello and good evening. Firstly, I am very pleased by the opportunity to address you. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, and I'm looking forward to fielding a number of your questions later. And to begin, I would like to divide my remarks into 3 distinct categories. Number 1, what is going wrong with religion and why young adults are leaving. Number 2, what is going right with the Church of Jesus Christ and its growing youth involvement. And number 3, what can we do about it? How can we work together to reverse societal deterioration? Let's begin. What is going wrong? I would attribute the adolescent exodus to generally a superficial understanding of the role of religion. I would also inculpate a number of sociocultural factors from my personal observation. They are as follows: a rampant individualism epitomized by self-proclaimed aphorisms such as, you do you. 2, an obsessive self-aggrandization in the sense that we, my generation, are self-obsessed but not self-loving. And number 3, an epidemic of entertainment in which we are trained to look at phones for hours on unsubstantive activities, which, when compared with the real world, we find that is boring. In summary, society at large is obsessed with creating a communal narcissism that champions beliefs and ideals that are fundamentally at odds with traditional organized religion, such as what I've just put forward. For more info on this, Q&A. The chasm between beliefs creates a false dichotomy, and when faced with the decision, the echo chambers of social media often create illusions in favor of the virtue of spiritualism. This imagined social pressure is causing my peers to cave to its creative and catatonic thinking. Additionally, spiritualism is easy. It doesn't require effort, work, or even commitment. For more on this, Q&A. I observe that my generation dearly wants to be good and love and accept people for who they are. We have an incredible aptitude for that. Unfortunately, we often confuse religion with societal division instead of what it truly is, a catalyst for societal harmony, and the only medium with the true capacity to improve and transform human behavior. In summary, what is going wrong? My generation is not understanding the role of religion and religion itself. Instead, they are not choosing to explore long enough to dissipate commonly held and accepted myths. On to part 2, what is going right? The Church of Jesus Christ is one of 2 religions which experiences a growing youth involvement. I have witnessed this growth firsthand. Is that 6 minutes already?
You're doing good.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard the bell. I was like, no way, I timed this. Okay, we'll keep going. I have witnessed the growth of the church within my own ward and denomination, the Henderson area. I have seen an explosion of missionary work, reactivations, and convert baptisms. While surveying many of these people in preparation for this talk, I heard many comments such as the following. Being a member of the church is in my ultimate self-interest. It simply makes sense. I experienced the world and it had nothing to offer. It left me feeling hollow. Everything I truly wanted in my life, a strong marriage, happy family, fulfillment, I can more easily obtain by practicing my religion. I need help and protection in this crazy life. I receive that by making promises and following the commandments of God. These are my peers, some of whom are here today. I can add my personal witness to these above. I do not know where I would be without my religion. It is the most important part of my life and influences every aspect of who I am, from university selection, marital selection, career, daily routines, and even my entertainment. The effect of the church is both positive and pervasive and has been the single most important factor that has brought lasting fulfillment and effervescent joy. I would attribute the genesis of my and these comments to 2 factors. First, the Church of Jesus Christ emphasizes the bulwarks of joy. Second, the highly participatory nature of the church kindles a conviction that transcends superficiality. In essence, it's fun and it works. So what do I mean by the bulwarks of joy? We learn in the Book of Mormon from various references that there is a manner of happiness. The Church of Jesus Christ doctrines and principles line up perfectly with these ideals, which are taught firstly in the family, secondly at church. Since a young boy, I have been taught the following doctrines. A strong emphasis on the importance of gender, marriage, and family, physical and emotional health, hard work and thrift, humility and service, education and study, virtue and compassion, generosity, and volunteer work. These have been taught, reinforced, and practiced since I was a child. As a personal example, when I was 12, I was ordained a deacon in the church. I am now a high priest at 24. In the last 12 years, I have taught over 1,000 church lessons, assisted in 500 service and volunteer opportunities, spent 8 years in high school and college studying church doctrines and scriptures, spent 2 years on a church mission, given over 500 talks and public speaking engagements, over 100 hours in temple service, thousands of dollars in humanitarian aid. I've probably read the Bible 5 times, the Book of Mormon 20, and other scriptures 10. I've prayed every day individually and with my family, had a familiar activity, and went to church every Sunday. Now that sounds excessive. But I only say this not to toot my own horn, but just to recognize that I am not unique. Every other member that you see out here has done the same things, and if they calculated it, their statistics would be very similar to mine. What I am emphasizing is the highly participatory nature of the Church of Jesus Christ. It empowers its youth. I was tasked with planning and coordinating activities, dances, firesides, devotionals since I was 12. This experience gave me a religious conviction, but also a religious understanding. I learned that church service is not only intellectually enlarging and satisfying for my soul, but also my social and emotional health. I fall short all the time, and I have plenty of mistakes, but I press forward with the hope and joy that I receive from Jesus Christ and my religion. It works, and I testify of it. Despite all this, I truly believe the value of the church is exemplified within the following story. On my 2-year volunteer mission to Brazil, I met a woman with an autistic son whose name was Cassia. I watched as Cassia's life was changed by encountering the gospel of Jesus Christ. Think of it. For the first time in your life, you are told the following: you are a child of the King of the universe who loves you deeply. The Creator has a divine plan for your success. Your life has a purpose, and you are here to learn, have families, and experience true joy. God wants to speak with you, and you can communicate with him directly in prayer and by revelation. God speaks to prophets today, just as he always has, and has established a path for you to return to him through a Redeemer named Jesus Christ, who will turn every trial into your everlasting benefit. How would you feel after hearing this? It changed Cassia's life, and is changing the lives of LDS youth around the world. They have purpose, identity, hope, and peace. They know how to find fulfillment and live long, happy, and healthy lives. Therefore, is it any wonder why they stay? Part 3, what can we do about it?
Ding, ding, ding.
Thank you. Perfect time. George Washington stated the following: let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. And if morality is the requisite base of a functional civilization, then religion becomes the indispensable cornerstone in the bedrock of our nation. So then, my plea to all of you today is twofold. If you are not a member of a religion, then join one. Get involved. It is the best thing you can do to help our society mend itself today. And if you are a member of a religion already, then participate, learn it, live it, and love it. Be an example of the believers. By practicing those espoused virtues, let's overwhelm this world with goodness and kindness. In 4th Nephi, and as explained by a modern apostle, sustainable societies are built when we cease to focus on our differences and come together in one as true followers of a higher power and conveyors of morality. Then, and only then, will we exude John Adams' statement to become a moral and righteous people, creating a nation that is a happier and healthier place. So finally, how can we help the youth? We challenge them. We challenge and empower them. We ask the hard questions. We have them study and struggle for the answers. And we teach them. We help them along the way. We let us fail, and then we watch them flourish. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but wow. Allison, wow. Joshua, wow. And my dear sister, Taliba, come on up.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you. My name is Taliba Abdul Wahid, and I am a member of the oldest and largest Black mosque in the state of Nevada. My mother, a former Baptist, converted to Islam at 17. My father, a former Catholic, converted at 20. When they had me and my siblings, they wanted to ensure that people would know that we were Muslim even before they met us. So my mother, whose last name was Johnson, and my father with the last name Williams, opened a book of Islamic names and picked Taliba, meaning student, and Abdul Wahid, meaning servant of the one, because they wanted me to love my religion and my community. From Arabic school to Islamic school, I spent most of my life being an active member of the Muslim community. When I started attending my current mosque 15 years ago, I was 12, and rightly so, I was considered the youth. Now at 27, I'm still considered the youth at my mosque, as the median age increases every year. I'm able to count on my hands how many members are between the ages of 18 and 30 at my mosque. For the last 15 years, I've watched as as in the classes that I grew up attending with friends grew smaller and smaller, and I watched as the students I taught in Arabic school, Islamic school, and Sunday classes grew up and left the mosque. I've been a part of and led youth groups where conversation was centered around why is the youth leaving, but never the reasons. Me, with my name meaning student, I decided to ask, why are we, the youth, leaving? What I most often hear is that the youth are leaving because the elders will not allow them to grow, because they aren't being given the opportunity to practice their religion in the way that represents their life. Religion is deeply personal, and in Islam, we believe that everyone has an independent relationship with Allah, and we must nurture that relationship. Within my community, we hear that the Quran is the guidance of how we should live our life and represent ourselves. We are told to take the lessons from the Prophet ﷺ and to live as the future of the Ummah. But when it comes to addressing the issues that young people are facing, even our imams cannot answer us. Islam is a religion practiced around the world. And in Muslim-majority countries, religion and culture often are closely blended. Living in the West, we are often met with cultural norms that call into question many of our own beliefs and teachings. For many of the youth, when faced with two different ideologies, it becomes a battle between religion and culture and the struggles of being an American Muslim versus a Muslim in America. I've talked to many young adults who face questions about their gender expression or their progressive ideas on how the world should look. These young adults, when going to their elders, are often told not to ask questions or this is just the way it is. Youth are not leaving because they don't value religion, but rather that those in leadership in our communities aren't willing to engage in conversation about how to be a Muslim in the changing world. So when you identify as non-binary, such as myself, and as Muslim, and your imam says that it is not a religious conversation, there is nowhere to go except to leave. When the issues of identity are being silenced in religious circles, it is the youth who leave and decide to be spiritual instead. If I cannot be non-binary and Muslim, then I will be a spiritual being who is not forced to hide some of me to represent the other. So while fasting during the month of Ramadan, while reading the Quran 6 times a year, while praying 5 times a day, I will not be known as a Muslim to many, but spiritual to all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Taliba. Jess, come on up.
I'm a little bit short, so. Hello and good evening. My name is Jess Malik, and I'm representing, oh, am I too loud? That tends to happen.
Rabbi taught me how to do this.
Thank you. Oh.
Not too short.
Hi, my name is Jess Malik, and I'm representing Sikhi. Most of you probably know my father, Teji Malik, is a board member of Interfaith, and so, like a good daughter, I'm following in his footsteps. Okay. When I was younger, I thought religion was something you were born with. I did not realize until I saw a silly teen show about high schoolers in which one of the characters said, "Religion is something you choose," that I thought differently. When you're young and you have to go to temple or church every week, when you just want to spend time with your friends or watch the entirety of the TGIF lineup on ABC, or read an interesting book about fantasy worlds and strange mysteries, religion can become a drag. It becomes an obligation, not an integral part of your being, not a seamless part of your day. It's something extra. It becomes, I have to do this to be a good X, Y, or Z. This may be why so many young people are moving away from religion. As the world has progressed, there have been astronomical technological advances that make life easier. As a child of the 90s, I no longer have to wait for the slow dial-up connection to come to fruition, nor hear the screeching call to action. We now have computers not only in our offices, but in our pockets. Even so, reconciling the progress we've made with social upheavals, economic recessions, public health emergencies, and pandemics, it's hard to see if we are moving forward. Progress is not linear, to be sure. However, different generations learn to cope with circumstances in their own ways. For instance, that computer in everyone's pocket that I mentioned, it gave us the opportunity to communicate in ways we couldn't have imagined previously. However, it also made it harder for us to be patient. made things less seamless in a way. Boundaries are hard to come by in the digital age. Instant gratification is the norm. We've lost our ability to be patient, so much so we have to relearn the virtue of staying in the present. I don't mean to say all this to disparage technology. I'm a technology enthusiast. However, it does speak to the topic at hand. Why not religion and God? The cyclical nature of society's tragedies and triumphs is inevitable. We're always going to have wars, elections, recessions, epidemics, etc. Usually people turn to their faith in times of strife. However, the fast-paced ways of the world today further complicate an already perplexing and sophisticated relationship with God and religion. Life has become I've got a half a dozen things on my to-do list. There is no time for faith. I cannot go to Shabbat services on Friday or Mass on Sunday. My boss has no boundaries and is expecting me to finish this work before Monday. If it sounds bleak, it is. Now, I'm meant to speak about this from the perspective of a Sikh, not just the perspective of a millennial. As a Sikh, how do I combat this dreary outlook and maintain my faith? Simple. I don't separate my faith from my life. What I love about Sikhi is that it's not quite a religion, but more of a lifestyle. Yes, we follow certain customs, such as the fact that many of us do not cut our hair. However, practicing these customs has less to do with abiding by a set of rules. It is more of a spiritual and metaphorical praxis. If I cut my hair, I would not consider it taboo, and many Sikhs do cut their hair for various reasons. However, for me, my unshorn hair shows a respect to my heritage and history as a Sikh going back centuries when only the Mughal emperors were allowed to wear turbans, and thus they were the only ones with crowns. For me, it's about embracing oneness, that we are all royal and sacred. We are all worthy of the crown. Furthermore, a Sikh is easily recognizable because of our long hair and the turbans we adorn. For the most part, this is positive. Of course, post-9/11 and post-2016 election, becoming recognizable sometimes can lead to deadly consequences. Because we are so visible, we are othered. For example, on September 15, 2001, 4 days after 9/11, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Sikh convenience store owner, was fatally shot. On August 5, 2012, a white supremacist opened fire at the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin. In 1984, countless Sikhs were killed during the genocide or 84 riots targeting them. In the Mughal era, many Sikhs were beheaded for their beliefs and their choice to stand with persecuted peoples at the time. Because of who they were targets. I say this not to bring you down, but to show you that despite this, we still carry on with being visibly Sikh. Because the features that physically represent us, that make us targets, are also ones that have shown so many people that we are approachable, that they are welcome in our gurdwaras and in our homes, that we are a safe space. For instance, in India, it is not uncommon for parents to recommend their daughters ride with Sikh cab drivers should they need to go out. We have temple services at our gurdwaras, specifically on Friday evenings and Sundays, during the day. I say specifically because the beauty of gurdwaras is that they are open 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. Everyone is welcome at any time for solace, community, and a nourishing and tasty meal. This exemplifies the way in which as a young woman in her 30s, I remain proudly a practicing Sikh, for lack of a better term. In fact, I do not think there is such a thing as a lapsed Sikh. Because Sikhi is a lifestyle, it is not separate from my being. It is not something I follow, it is how I live my life. Religion is something you choose, ideally. I say ideally because for the most part, one can assume if you have Catholic parents, you'll be Catholic to some degree. If you have Jewish parents, you're Jewish. I have Sikh parents, and it is not a coincidence I am Sikh. It doesn't always feel like something that is up to us. I have certainly felt that way when I was younger and didn't understand much about the history of my people. This is why I believe you hear more people say they are spiritual rather than religious, because quite frankly, it is easier. It is not an extra step or an extra layer of armor they have to put on. It is much easier to say that you believe in a higher power, you're just unsure of the specifics, than it is to feel like in addition to trying to live your life, make a good living, keep your head above water, you have to do A, B, and C to feel a connection outside yourself or to feel like you are a good person. And in the world where instant gratification is king, isn't that what we are looking for? A harmonious way to feel fulfilled, to feel meaning in our lives, to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, whether that be God, a higher power, or the magnanimous world of science? The idea of religion, although with roots in ancient times, is evolving. Pope Urban II may have announced a call to arms, offering Christian indulgences if they fought the good fight to reclaim the Holy Land in the year 1095. However, times have changed. We still have war and religious disagreement. We unfortunately still have invasions and land conquests. Even so, we have different tools at our disposal. We've encountered more varied demographics of people. We have learned new things. Thus, I do not think a concern of the future is that more youth are straying away from a religion. I think the greatest greater concern is remaining comfortable, resting on our laurels and being afraid of change. If our beliefs cannot evolve with the times, how can we? How can we ever grow, improve, and become fulfilled people worthy of God? Thank you.
So in 1993, in Chicago, they celebrated the second Parliament of World Religions. Since then, there have been 8 Parliaments of World Religions. Every one of those parliaments since 1993, all of the people at those parliaments were fed at lunch by the Sikh tradition. 8 to 10,000 people every day were fed by the Sikh tradition. And I can tell you it was an extraordinary experience because you didn't know who you'd be sitting next to. Might be an Indian chief on one side and a Buddhist Roshi on the other side. So Jess, thank you so much, and great salutations to you and the tradition. Now I'd like to ask Sterling if you'd come up and share with us a little insight from the Baha'i tradition. If you have cards, raise your hand.
When we look at why people, and especially youth, are turning away from religion as a source of spirituality, we need to look at the role of religion both on an individual and on a societal level. On an individual level, the Baha'i faith would say there's the expression of the independent investigation of the truth, that we must see things through our own eyes and not through the eyes of others. We must gain ownership of the beliefs that we want to uphold. And And in this modern age, we find how prudent that is, especially for youth who are in the spiritual springtime of their life, in which they are discovering who they themselves are and the world around them. And it is in this springtime of youth that there is access to a multitude of spiritual qualities, a strong sense of justice, a strong sense of compassion. But these qualities, they must be nurtured. They can't exist in isolation. And in the modern world, we have all these various forces of society that are both arrayed against them and provide obstacles. Some of these obstacles are rampant materialism and a hyper individualism. And as a part of this, religion has been further confined to the role of the private sphere of individuality. When we look in the modern discourse, religion is very exceptionally not brought into most conversations for fear that it brings about conflict and dissension. In public conversations, you're encouraged to not bring up religion or politics. And so we find that the role of religion in providing perspective, providing input into society is restrained. And so if you restrain religion to the personal life, well, in the modern age, we have great access to information about all the various religious traditions. And in addition to that, we have the perspectives of individuals who may have ideas outside the traditional religions. And so in that perspective, it's hard for young people to necessarily tie themselves to a specific tradition, either because maybe they see the the conflict that arises between the two, between different religions, or maybe they see the commonalities. And in tying yourself to religion, there's a perspective that you are tying yourself down, you are relieving yourself of that independent investigation. And that there's the perspective of abdicating that individuality in lieu of adhering to a blind dogma. Now, I would say that is not the purpose of religion. The purpose of religion isn't blind obedience, that religion offers a pathway of continual discovery and renewal of the individual. But this also has to happen within the context of how the individual interacts with society. The purpose of all religion is the unity and the service to mankind, all religion. This is the fundamental basis of all the traditions of history. And in order to do that, religion must be involved with the life of society. If we view the problems of the world, we see that underneath it all, there is a spiritual malaise that underlies it. And it is through the spiritual properties of service to our fellow man that we can rectify this. And in fact, there is a twofold moral purpose. Through personal endeavor and service, we cultivate our spiritual qualities. And in cultivating our spiritual qualities, we are then better able to contribute to the transformation of society and the betterment of the world. Thank you.
Sterling, thank you so much. Well done. For the whole panel, let's give them a round of applause. And here's the first question we want to ask to all the panelists. We'll begin with Sandy and come this way, if we would. The question is, what is the difference between spiritual and religious?
It's a good question. So I guess it depends on who you're asking, all right? When you say someone's religious, they usually think that means that they are following the obligations and tradition of their particular religion. So if you were Jewish, for example, and you want to say, I'm religious, you keep kosher, you go to services on Friday night, you belong to a synagogue, you do all of those religious things that allow you to say, I'm religious. If you say that you are spiritual, you basically, I think, imply that you're a free agent. So the things in my religion, I will kind of, pick and choose, and if they add meaning to my life and they make me feel good about myself and a little closer to God, that's fine. And I can sprinkle in a little bit of Buddhism, and I can sprinkle in a little bit of crystals and a little bit from all these other religions, and therefore I am spiritual. Spiritual is not necessarily a definition of a particular religious tradition. It is an adjective that kind of defines someone who picks a little bit from many different religious traditions. That, to me, would be the distinction.
I definitely agree with all of your sentiments. I think when you are religious, you are practicing a certain type of religion where you're following all of the obligations, all of the rituals in that religion. And then spirituality and being spiritual means that you feel that there is a higher power, but not you don't necessarily know what that is or can't define it, so you're just feeling a certain type of way, but not necessarily putting it to a certain religion or defining exactly what it is.
I'm glad you listened to my hints in my speech, because I already wrote a section on this. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents again. So spiritualism is an indolent and cowardly cop-out in the religious debate. Now, I know that's a strong comment, so let me explain. Spiritualism doesn't require anything from you. As such, it is also of no benefit to you. It doesn't require any effort to go out and admire a sunset and see the beautiful rays of light, or to go and look at the Teton Mountains and be inspired by their grandeur, or perhaps visit Punta Cana and see these perfect palms and ethereal white sands. That's normal. Although people who are spiritual that want to do this and feel this natural connection to the world are missing the entire point. Because the intricate and diverse complexity of the natural world must denote and can only denote that there is a God. And this is also reiterated in the Book of Mormon in Alma 30. And what it says simply is that the natural points that there is a God. And so then, it is impossible and irrational to speculate that just one marvelous design, if not so many upon the face of the earth, could be the result of a random burst of energy and consummate material. The premise doesn't make any sense to me, just considering basic probability. So then, if spiritualism must unequivocally point to the verifiable conclusion that there is a God, then what must you do about that? Because if God then exists, how does it change your life? And that is where religion comes into play, by giving you the paths and the methods to properly worship that higher power, bind yourself to him, and allow his influence to permeate your life. So then, if one wants to be spiritual only, they are unconsciously accepting the fact, but not the consequence that is inevitably tied to it. And I personally can't accept that and remain in good conscience. So, what is spiritualism? To me, it's a lack of commitment. Unfortunate lack of commitment. And being religious shows that you are choosing to stand with God despite the pressures that are put upon you. We keep this one.
So I believe that spiritualism and religion are synonyms. I believe that you can be religious and spiritual, and that being spiritual just allows you to take in more of the world. You can still have a practice of religion and be spiritual and still appreciate nature, still appreciate other religions. I believe that being a spiritual person just opens you up to a larger door than just the traditional practice of religion.
That was really nice. I think, I'm trying to harken back to my theology classes from long ago, but personally I would say, I think it has to do with structure and lack of structure. So religion, to sort of reference to what Rabbi Axelrod was saying, was it has more of a structure to it. You're following a certain system or set of values or certain rituals, or you go to temple or the mosque or something like that. Whereas spiritual is less structured, and I think I would argue that it's also internal versus external. So spiritual would be more internal, how you feel connected, maybe sort of like a direct connection to God or religion or a higher power, versus religion, which is an external demonstration of your praxis.
In regards to spirituality and religion, I think the Baha'i Faith would say it's important that we all cultivate a sense of spirituality. In the Baha'i Faith, there's this perspective that all the religions of the world come from one source, a divine source. It is as like a sun shedding its rays upon the land. And we might attribute certain ideas to certain religions, but spirituality is available to all. Now, I would say in regards to spiritualism, being spiritual versus being religious, I think it's complicated in that the modern age, we do now have access to, all these different ideas and faiths, and it is difficult to make sense of it all because we might disagree with some, we might agree with some. I think the important aspect to it, though, is that by and large, I think all of us believe in a sense of morality, and that we want to strive for unity, despite having different beliefs or different perspectives.
So this next question is a little personal, and feel free to answer or not answer. But the question is, have you ever had a personal crisis of faith, and would you be willing to share that? And we'll begin again with Sandy at the far end and come this way.
I guess I haven't, so I'm not sure where to take the question. But, so if I haven't, you want me to just pass it on? Okay.
I definitely have. I think it is quite normal to consider what you're following and questioning it, because if you're not questioning it, you're not seeking closer to it. So a personal story is college. You guys have probably been there. College is full of temptations, and that was probably the least that I was close to my faith. That was when I strayed away from God. That was when I wasn't going to church as much because I was busy with other things, with partying, friends, and just the social norms of what college is. I didn't go to a Catholic school. It had Christian roots, but it wasn't somewhere where we had to go to Mass every Sunday. So it was just the foundation of the campus. And what really turned me is when you reach that rock bottom, when you're trying to find meaning of why. Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? I turned back to my foundation of my faith, and that's what really turned my life around. I was partying way too much. I was failing my classes. And I was telling my parents, what am I doing with my life? And my mom told me, why don't you go to church? You used to go to church all the time. Maybe you can do that on Sunday instead of curing from a hangover. I went, you know what, Mom? Let me try it. What's to lose? So I think that is what really turned it all around for me, is when you stray away so much, you realize what is missing in my life, and what is missing was my religion and my faith, and you slowly make your way back to it.
Thank you, Allison. I would say, have I ever had a crisis of faith? Absolutely. And I think that crises of faith, like Allison said, are normal. They're supposed to happen. And that's one of the things that I love about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that we learn that there are going to be hardships, tests, and trials throughout this life. And those are meant to be opportunities to grow. And so when I have been faced with a crisis, and I've been faced with multiple of them, even recently, my father asked me, are you angry at God? And he asked me that because there were a number of recent disappointments that I had faced that, looking from an outward perspective, it would have been rational to conclude that I could have had every reason to be angry at God. Now, was I angry at God? No. And what did I do with that crisis? I used it as an opportunity to reinforce my faith even more. And in the Church of Jesus Christ, we believe in a modern prophet. And one of the things that he says is to doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. And I think that that maxim is incredibly important and relevant to all of us, is that when we're faced with trials, let's use them as opportunities for growth. Let's use them to truly bind ourselves back to our roots and to that ultimate creator that is our salvation. I'm not used to keeping the mic here.
For For me, it was when I was closest to my Muslim community that I questioned my faith the most. I asked myself, am I practicing for myself and to build a better relationship with God? Or am I practicing because people are watching me? When I was 18, I moved out of my mother's house and I moved right across the street from my mosque. At 4 o'clock, 4:30, sometimes 5, if I was lucky, I would wake up to the call of prayer and I would get up and walk the 20 feet across the street to go pray. It was when people said, you are so religious, you are so pious, that I questioned my faith, my religion, my relationship with God the most. And it was in moving away that I took back my faith for myself and that I said, I am practicing for my independent relationship, not for what other people see.
So, thank you. I've definitely had crises of faith in my life, and I guess the most memorable times where I questioned my identity as a Sikh would probably be when I was othered by other people. So wondering why my name was strange. My real name is Jaskirat, that's not Jess, by the way. It's 9 letters long and a couple syllables. And things like, why didn't I cut my hair? Or just things that didn't make sense to, I guess, our society growing up. So it made me question, well, why don't we cut our hair? Why is my name so long? Why isn't my name Heather or Sarah or Amy? Why is my name Jaskirat? What does that even mean? Why can't I cut my hair? I mean, my friends have cute haircuts. And then I realized it wasn't about that. It wasn't about what others thought. It was about how I felt inside and my connection to my spirituality and religion. And when I was in college, I majored in history and I studied medieval history and Christian history as well as modern Middle Eastern history. And I didn't think to study my own religion, and history, even though it's so complicated. But once I did, I realized, okay, well, as I said to you before, one of the reasons we don't cut our hair is to honor our ancestors and the sacrifices that they made, because we are all royal and we are all equal, and so we are all deserving of a crown. My name means someone who's known for doing good deeds, doing service, and that's one of the pillars of my religion is selfless service. So once I sort of delved into the history and tried to think of not what others thought and how others might have found me different, but what I thought personally, that's when I felt most connected. Thank you.
I definitely think that experiencing doubt in faith is a very normal experience. And like it's been said, it might even be necessary or healthy as an instrument of testing one's faith to investigate more, to understand yourself more. Personally, what I can rely on is there is a wealth of history of not only the Baha'i faith, but the various religious traditions of the world, of the heroism and the compassion and the sheer will to overcome that is present in many of these stories. And for me, I have a very personal connection to those, so even if I might struggle in one aspect or another, I feel that intrinsic connection, and so I yearn to discover more about the faith, but then also how others who have come across these crises have responded to them as well.
Thank you very much. So here's a question, maybe a little broader, which is, as you look at the world today, from where you sit, from within your tradition, do you think that there's any legitimacy to the youthful critique of institutional religion? And we'll start with Sterling and go the other way.
Well, I feel that with youth, in a lot of religion, what they see is something that either they can't connect to or they don't see as being relevant to not only maybe their own issues, but the larger issues of society. And, you know, there is sometimes expressed in various different you know, communities. It doesn't matter which religion. People do come across a sentiment of, you know, don't question things. This is the way it is. And again, this is not specific or exclusive to any one religion. This is an attitude of people. And when a young person comes across that, and they see the way the state of the world, they're not seeing an answer to the state of the world in that. And so I think there are very legitimate concerns that young people pose towards religion.
I agree with Sterling. Okay, sorry. I agree with Sterling. I think that's an excellent point about relativism. I also think that religion, if we're talking about structural, institutional religion, I think has the chance to evolve with the questions it's being asked, whichever religion or spirituality that may be. I mean, I could give you a boring lecture on history, historical times and cyclical whatnot, but I'm just going to say that as humans, we evolve, technology evolves. We ask questions when we learn, or we learn more when we ask questions. So that is a very legitimate concern, and I do think it's a good point to ask those questions. How do I relate to institutional religion? Why am I seeing the world the way it is, and what is the solution? And so I don't think it's particularly a concern to ask those questions, and I encourage those questions and encourage that sort of intellectual discussion and thought, because we are all evolving as we grow.
We have to be able to meet the youth where they are and not expect them to meet us where we are, or in our mosques or temples or churches within our religious communities. The young people are asking questions about how does religion play into their everyday lives, and their questions aren't being answered. There's so many youth who say, I do not see myself in religion because religion has constantly shown that they are not accepted. So we have to be able to start answering their questions about the world today and how do they fit into it, and how does religion play a role in their lives?
I would say, as far as whether or not the youthful critique of religion is valid, is yes and no. Yes, because it's identifying that the youth are not relating to religions, as has been stated, and that's a valid concern, as we've brought up. I believe that also says a little bit about the youth and a little less about the church. I think that, as has been stated as well, that we suffer in this time of impatience, and that the youth also aren't giving religions enough of a chance. They're not choosing to go forward and look for solace within the religion, and choosing to study to find the answer for their questions. Instead, they're looking to social media or to more secular or scientific reasons for their questions. And I think that lack of choosing to look for answers, or choosing to prove your faith instead of just trying to disprove your faith all the time, is one of the reasons why we see the youth falling away.
Taliba, I really like what you said, because I think that is so true in everyone's faith journey, is you have to meet them where they're at, because when you don't, or you have a standard of a picturesque, whatever you think your religion is, it may tend to push people away. If you don't have those open discussions, if you don't have those questions at the table, and then discuss very taboo topics and things that would be uncomfortable to talk about. So I think it is a challenge on both ends, similar to what Sam said too, because young people have to give the institutions a benefit of the doubt rather than just exiling it immediately because it's not cool to be religious.
Why ask a rabbi? Right? Everything's right here in the palm of your hand. Why ask an imam? Why ask, a priest? It's all right here. That's part of the problem, right? Because if they have a question, they'll Google it, they'll find an answer that they want or reject or whatever. So part of it is this need, I think, to engage them where they are, but also to engage them with the period. Because if they don't feel that relationship with their rabbi or religious leader, then it's not that they're rejecting the institution, it's just irrelevant to them. And so it's our obligation to bring that sense of relevancy to them by finding them where they are. And it could be a lot of places. It could be in a coffee shop. It could be in synagogue. It could be, in a casual conversation, the grocery store, wherever they are physically is one place. And the other is where they are emotionally. And so I like to teach, this year I'm teaching the 11th and 12th graders because I know that pretty soon they're going to be going off to college, and I want to make sure that when they pack their suitcases, they're packing their religious beliefs with them as well and don't leave them at home. And that's a tall order for some kids, especially in college when they're looking around and they're seeing all different kinds of ideas and all different kinds, and for lack of a better term, a competition of ideas. But for many of them, it isn't even that. It's just, they're just trying to get by, and maybe the little that they've gained in childhood sustains them enough until they are challenged. Someone they love dies, or maybe they are hitting rock bottom because of an addiction issue, or maybe there is something in life that challenges them and they feel that the answer to that is, quote, a spiritual religious answer. And if they're not equipped to use that, hopefully they'll seek out someone who is able to meet them and understand them and greet them with open arms. So I think there is some institutional mistrust or lack of relevancy, but I think it's our job as teachers to bring the religion to them and create opportunities to learn, to grow, and to find and explore. Otherwise, what have I been doing for the last 40 years?
This has really been rich. You all agree? Yeah? So we have time for just a couple more questions. Rabbi, you mentioned that within the Orthodox tradition of Judaism, there seems to be a surge within that tradition in terms of believers and especially youth. Also, it probably could be observed that this is true in the evangelical dimensions of Christianity and in the Orthodox dimensions of Islam. So I would love if you and Allison and Taliba might speak to why is it that the Orthodox or more conservative elements of the tradition seem to be growing more rapidly than the less Orthodox?
Well, I would say, one, they're more homogeneous in their beliefs. You know exactly what is required of you from cradle to grave. And also because they marry at a very young age and have a lot of children, there's this very strong network amongst the parents to support each other. And that creates a very tight bond within those communities. And they're also very insular. So therefore, in some of the more Orthodox traditions, you cannot use the internet. You cannot watch TV. So you're separated from some of these distractions, except maybe baseball. But other than that, and that's true, other than that, they are divorced from, quote, the temptations of the everyday world. But they find that what they are involved in, the religious practices of Judaism, is a very fulfilling life. And it's not, quote, that they know no different. I mean, they could. They're free to assimilate. They're free to leave that Orthodox community, but they could be cut off from their families. And therefore, there's a lot of pressure to stay within that religious tradition in the very ultra-Orthodox. And again, why are they growing? Very high birth rate, 7, 8 children, and that's going to do it, folks. Right?
Yeah. I agree with you too. I think it's the community that really serves that upward trajectory. If you're surrounded by a Christian community that this is all that you know and the program is continued and you don't have that those missing years from, like I was talking about earlier, 17 to whenever you get married, that's all you know. So you continue to follow it. And when you're in that in that type of Christian community, you continue on that path. But like you can see, it's not common throughout the entire branch of Christianity. You can't say that it's the same in Lutheran that it is in Catholic, or Baptist to non-denominational. But it's the community that you're in, I think, that is what is causing that upward trajectory.
Taliba.
So I can only speak for what I see within my own community. As a Black Muslim, within most African American mosques, we have a large convert population. So this population is usually people within their early 30s to, whenever. So this is typically an older population. They've experienced life. In Islam, we don't drink, we don't eat pork, we don't go out and party, we don't have premarital sex. And a lot of our converts have come from a life where they did experience all of those. So when it comes to converting at an older age, you see more, you want something different in life. That life that you originally led was not for you. And when you accept Islam, you say, I want to change my life for the better. So it's getting rid of some of those habits that you had before. It's getting rid of eating pork or smoking or drinking every day. So instead, they want to shift, and that's why there's more traditional, more conservative, older Muslims.
Beautiful. Okay, so this is a short one, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up. So in 1 or 2 words, what is that spiritual practice in your tradition which makes your religion more spiritual to you? And we'll begin with Sterling.
I think prayer is a fundamental aspect of spirituality within Baha'i faith, and reading the writings every day.
Is this thing on? I would say probably one of the main pillars of Sikhi, which is seva, selfless service. So community service, giving back to others, and not necessarily in a volunteer perspective, but just throughout your life. Like, for example, I tutor at CSN, and just seeing, the light go on in a student's eyes when they can learn something, that makes me feel good. I mean, I'm getting paid for it a little bit, but I think just service to others, that's what keeps me in touch with Sikhi and spirituality.
I would have to echo Sterling and say prayer. As a Muslim, we pray 5 times a day, and that's just the baseline, so you can definitely pray a lot more, and some days are harder, so you pray a little bit more. But I would definitely say that's something that from the moment I wake up until I lay my head on my pillow, I know that all I have to do is go do a couple of prayers, take a couple of minutes, and I'm closer to God.
I would say revelation and sealing power. Those are 3 words. I guess and is a word too, but I would say revelation because, like I said earlier, we believe that we can talk to God and God wants to talk to us, and that God talks to ecclesiastical leaders and even a prophet today. And that is what I believe is the inextricable link between us and the divine, which is what makes our religion so spiritual and special and even individual to each of us. And that is really the bedrock of our tradition. At the end of the Book of Mormon, we read it and then we pray about it to determine whether or not it is a book that is of God, that is subject to divine inspiration. And we practice receiving that revelation from a very young age. And so that is what I would say is what makes the religion spiritual. Secondly, with sealing authority, we believe that families can be eternal. And that means after death. So when we are married, we don't say until death do we part. And what that means is that the familial unit is something divine and everlasting. And so when that is the case, it totally changes the perspective of our marriages and our families, updating them to be our true priorities in life, because they are one of the things, besides knowledge, that will continue with us. And so for that reason, I believe that revelation and the sealing authority are the two things that make our religion so spiritual.
For me, there are a lot of great worship and prayers that are in the Catholic faith, but what makes my religion spirituality to me is when we worship through song. It is so powerful to be in a room full of people admiring God and singing for his grace. That is the spiritual connection for me, because in that moment, you're singing, but you're praying. So that is something that is super special to me that makes my religion more spiritual.
Praying with your feet. If prayer is just something that, is there to purify your soul in a rhetorical sense, in a symbolic sense, that's okay. That's a good in itself. But if prayer motivates you to go into the world and change the world, so much the better. That's what brings to me a sense of spirituality.
Well, let us give our panelists one more round of applause. Thank you so much. You have been fabulous. And I encourage you all to attend other places of faith, to attend a Catholic church, to attend a Gurdwara, to attend one of our mosques. We have how many mosques here in the Valley? 8 mosques. And we have 3 Gurdwaras, and Baha'i temples. There's one center over on Alta, which is absolutely exquisite, and I encourage you to visit and just explore and see what you see and meet the people. Because what you will experience, in my experience, is that we have a lot more in common than we have that which differs. And a friend of mine, Diana Eck from Harvard, has a project called the Pluralism Project, and she suggests that Southern Nevada is no different than most big cities in America. All of the faiths are represented. And so let us learn how to pray with our feet by opening our arms, our hearts, and our minds to the other, and recognizing that truth is to be found in many different ways. So God bless you all. We have a social hall over to the left. Go through that door there, and we're going to share some libations. So thank you again, and God bless you. What's that? Oh, evaluations. We have evaluations. Please fill those out and give those to our lovely people at the door. You will not get to the donuts unless you give it to them.